I remember that day so clearly. I remember where I was when the news started coming in. I remember calling my parents. I remember being so confused about what was going on, because even in my life, terrorist attacks in Israel were never at that mass loss casualty. And I remember saying to Paul, what is happening? Because the numbers were just rising and rising, and we felt so detached, and it was just we couldn't wrap our head around what was going on. And I know what that did for us just as a family, and seeing what my parents went through going and visiting, but then hearing all of these stories about these survivors who are in their final years feeling rejected and lost and hated again, and feeling. Hey, I'm Megann Marcellino, and I want to welcome you back to Generations at the Table. Thank you so much for pulling up a seat and being here with me, with us today. I'm really honored to have one of my favorite speakers, my dad, my Rabbi, Curt Landry, here with me today. And we are here because we want to have a conversation with you about some of the things that we see happening in Israel in all of our projects. We were having a conversation the other day about kind of what we see across the board, how has life shifted and changed since October 7th? What has happened? What are we seeing? And he really has a message that he wants us to be able to hear, to understand, so that we can pray and so that we can do something, so that we can stand beside our brothers and sisters. So, Rabbi, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. And I'm so proud. Your mom and I are so proud of you and Paul and the family and all that you do. And I'm honored to do this. I'll try my best not to be emotional about it, but this is a very real issue. We're going to actually talk about the post-traumatic stress that we've experienced and what we're seeing from our children that we take care of, our lone soldiers, our brigades, the commanders and the leaders. And probably the most painful one for your mom and I is our Holocaust survivors. Because we have Holocaust survivors now that won't come out of their room and come down for the meals we provide. We have to bring the meal up because they're in a mental state and they're crying and they feel like it's all happening. They feel like it's happening all over again, the Holocaust. And so I just want to talk about so people can kind of understand, pray, but also take action and help us.
Yeah. I think you can even rewind, you mentioned the Holocaust survivors. I had never really realized this, but, after COVID, we worked with some organizations that work closely with Holocaust survivors. And they said that the COVID lockdowns put their survivors in that mental place of being in hiding, being locked down, having their freedoms removed. And so those who had survived the Holocaust immediately went back to those, which at the time they were children, but those experiences of what it was like to be in hiding, to not be able to leave their homes. And so it was a completely different situation, but that really took them, it was like a spiral. And so they were struggling with post-traumatic stress then, and then all of a sudden the war, and October 7th, and then the war. So it's really been thing after thing since 2020 basically?
Yeah. Well, we started out with 200 and then went to 350. We're at 1,000 now. And most of them are in Jerusalem or surrounding. We have some in El Damim, but mostly, which is Jerusalem now, East Jerusalem. But the sirens going off. I've been there where the sirens go off. And when they do, their whole continents, they're there, they're eating. We're doing one of the parties that we do. And if the siren goes off, it's so deep in them. One of the things your mom and I do, and they let us do, and of course you do it, you've been there with us, is, we'll have a big U-shaped table and we'll have 30 or 50 or whatever we're feeding them.
More, 60, 80, I think, in that room.
Yeah. And what we do, and it's tight, and they know we're coming, so they all come, but we make sure that we physically touch them, shake their hand, touch their shoulder, and bless them, and they just light up. And a couple of the ones that we really know and love, they'll have us up. They want us to come to their room.
Yeah.
And they'll show us like some of them, the one that was there showing us like some jewelry she made. They had it's very special. I had a good story. We went to one of the ladies, and you would know who it was, and when she was showing us her jewelry, and I always carry petty cash with me that ministry gives me, and so I had our photographer Ofer, and so we went and we leave, and we get ready to leave her room, and I take some money and I put it on her little table there for her, and Ofer goes, "I saw you." I go, "What?" He goes, "I saw what you did." And he just started crying. He's like, what, 45, 50. And he started crying. He said, he goes, "That's so kind. It's so kind." And I told him, I said, in the scripture it says, perfect love casts out all fear.
Yeah.
So, that's really kind of the key to post-traumatic stress is you have to love them. There has to be, touch points. We're here at the anniversary of October the 7th, and your mom and I don't want to say we're invited. They basically said, you need to come over here.
Yeah, I remember. So
we loaded up. And one of the things we've done, which is very uncommon to the way your mom and I operate, is it was very short notice. We had to get airfare, which was hard. You got the air. But anyway, we just loaded up and went. And
it was hard because everything was shut down. No one was flying in.
Right.
No one was in hotels. It was right after. So it's just like the world had come to a crashing halt.
So we got over there, but we also physically didn't prepare ourselves. And us, we're mentally like 35 and physically we're 70. So anyway, we just loaded up and went. And to be honest with you, I wasn't prayed up. We weren't vitamined up. A lot of times, we'll go over to the Cassius place and we'll get a vitamin C injections or NAD or whatever. And we didn't do any of that. So it was just like a panic. Like it was like you get a call from your family and someone has passed away and you just load up and go. And that's what we did. And to be honest with you, we weren't expecting what we saw. And of course, everything in the South was shut down. And we work with the IDF. And so we actually had military escorts, and they said, no, this is important from the highest up, from Minister of Defense, everyone in higher said, you need to see this. And so we actually had a friend that's in the military who lives on one of the kibbutzes. I don't want to say which one, but so we went, and he was literally there defending the kibbutz with a handgun. And he had terrorists coming in with automatic, weapons. Yeah. And so that was our guide. He took me in. And I told him, with your mom, I said, I don't want her going inside the houses. She can see it. But we're there, and everything's still smoldering, and I'm not being, but the smells, it's all just happened. And I've never seen anything so horrific in my life. And they did take me in the houses. And then I was also there with one of the fathers who lost his son that was there, and he took me into the house, and you could see what happened. But my point is that right after October the 7th, when we were there, I asked the Lord, I said, it feels like something that had been held back had been released from the pit of hell. It talks about in Revelation, like there's demons and principalities that are held back for a time, and then prophetically they're released. And I felt like the Lord said, yes, this is a release. Prime Minister Netanyahu on the 8th, October the 8th, said we're battling an Amalekite spirit. That's what it is. We're battling. So the Amalekite spirit, to kind of give people more of a handle on it, that would be like the spirit that Haman had in the story of Esther. So So anyway, we saw all the stuff, we ministered, we went to the soldiers, we went to the Gaza base in the south, which we've supported for, I think, 15 years. And we get there and, they have all the commanders' pictures on the wall. And these are people we recognize, some that we know, and we lost 9. And so we've lost family members before, but I've never lost 9 people. So all this stuff is bombarding me and your mom. And so, and we went and visited our safe house kids, and we went to the lone soldiers, and we visited Holocaust survivors. And what was happening with all of us after October the 7th was post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
And when your mom and I actually got home, and I can share with it now, our immune systems actually shut down. We both got very sick because of the post-traumatic stress that overcame our systems, and we're still recovering from it. But the reason that I'm bringing this out is not just for prayer, but I really, the CLM partners and the donors that support us, it's inconsistency. Mm-hmm. When I first started working in Israel, I was working then with the finance minister, and that was Bibi Netanyahu. When he was finance minister, I was working on a project. And he asked me one night, it was just he and I there, and no security and everything. And he said to me, I need to ask you a question. He says, why do you do this? And I said, well, I just came from Tiberias today. At that time, we had an after-school program we sponsored through House of David. And there's little girls there, 7 and 9, and in broken English, the biggest thing they asked me, they were hanging on to me just like your children, our grandchildren do. And they ask a question just like our grandchildren ask, when are you coming back? And I said, and then, are you coming back? I said, yes. And so that's what I said to the finance minister, Prime Minister Netanyahu. I said, the reason I do this is those little girls and their parents can't come in to the finance office and talk to you. I said, God's blessed me to be their voice, to be able to talk. But the reason I bring that up into this podcast is this. The touch point is every box of food we deliver, every pedicure, every haircut, every bright red, purpley dye hair job with the Holocaust survivors. Yeah. Everything we do, the point is, it's the people coming to deliver.
Consistently, through it all.
Through it all. Pizza party for our safe house girls and boys, whatever, sponsoring stuff. We have soldiers with post-traumatic stress. We're sponsoring going to horseback riding therapy.
Yeah.
It's that touch point. And I can tell you for sure the biggest common denominator, and because you've been with us your whole life, is when we've been doing humanitarian aid, they don't care what you know until they know how much you care. And caring, it's like anything else. You have to have, it's not quality time, it's time. They want to know you're there. And like this last trip, your mom and I was our 44th trip. And right now as we're doing this podcast, I had 2 calls in the last 2 days. When are you coming back? They want us to come and be there. So I think the post-traumatic stress, I'm not a psychologist, just a minister. I can't really minister to them, but I can minister them in love. The scripture says, one of the very first scriptures that we received with humanitarian aid was, by doing good, putting the foolish talk to foolish men to naught. And you've been to Israel many times, the network television that comes from America that's there, and I don't want to mention the name, but it's very liberal. Mm-hmm. And so all they're seeing is that universities in the United States, 60% of the students are now pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian. Yeah. And so many times I've been with young soldiers, and they'll say, you mean there's Americans that don't hate me? Yeah. I hear they say I'm a baby killer, I'm genocide, and one of the things we do every time we get on a base, we usually will do a big barbecue, and we'll bring steak and chicken and big salads. We don't just do hamburgers. We do really good food. And I fix them what I would fix if I was having Shabbat at your house. And when we get done the barbecue, then we usually go into a big building, and there'll be 50 to 150 of them. And this is what I say to them. And when I do it, 60% are crying. These are soldiers.
Yeah.
Girl soldiers and boy soldiers. But they're so young. I mean, you're young, but they're like
Really
19,
young.
20.
Yeah, babies.
And then their commanders are there your age. And I share the same thing every time. And this is what I say. I say, you are like no other soldiers in all the world. Mm-hmm. And there's usually a translator. And I said, the reason you are like soldiers, like no other place in the world, is because you are the notzarim. You are, the notzarim in Hebrew means you are the watchman on the wall. What you do is fulfilling really the integrity of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has spoken words through the Torah, through Moses, and through the prophets. And he has been very specific on this land being the land of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the Jewish people, all 12 tribes. And you are the ones defending. It's not just the land, but you're defending the integrity of the land, that God's word is true, and that God is not a man that he should lie. And that's why the world hates you, because most of the world is following demonic things and other gods. But those who love God love you, because there has to be somebody who is the enforcer. There has to be somebody that is speaking the word, preaching the word. There has to be somebody who is actually going out and removing the bad guys and defending the innocent. Yeah. And I said, that's you. And I said, you're the watchman. You're called and chosen of God to protect the integrity of the word of God. And I said, for the Christians who support you through Curt Landry Ministries, those who sow finance, they're not just supporting you, but they're supporting the integrity of the word. You are the prophecy keepers. Mm-hmm. And when real Christians, not religious people, but when born again, spirit-filled Christians fall in love with Jesus and fall in love with God, they fall in love with you, because God calls you, and Jesus said, you're the apple of his eye. And I literally, when I'm there, they're weeping. If not, they're very emotionally touched. They all come up to me later and they say, your words burned in me. I've never heard this before. And then some of them can't talk, and they just come up and they hug your mom and I. And listen, you can't be involved in soldiering and all the violence that's in soldiering and all the violence that's happening without having this post-traumatic stress. And so, yes, we need to pray for them, but we need to increase the humanitarian aid that we're doing, and we need to be consistent with it. And I think, and you know this because you're in our family, the favor we have in Israel comes because we have been doing the same thing at different levels for 30 years. It's been a long time. So it's just, we just keep doing it, and we will always do it. And when I get with, it doesn't make any difference. Ukrainian orphan children, think about it. Those kids in Netanya, when we met them, they're beautiful Ukrainian kids, and the reason they were not being helped is because all the non-Jews were being helped, and they left all the Jewish kids behind. Yeah. So the Jewish agency goes in and rescues these Jewish kids whose parents have either been killed or misplaced, and they bring them to Israel. And here they are. They don't speak the language. They're used to being in a cold culture. Now they're in, tropical desert type culture, Hebrew language, and they needed to be integrated in. They brought them to Haifa and Netanya, where we worked with them, because that's where the Ukrainians are and the Russians. And so they're bringing these kids in, and the mayor of Haifa called Sam and said, I need to ask Curt a favor. He said, I read his book, because my book's in Hebrew. He said, you know what? He's an orphan. He was rescued. I have these orphans. He said, we're going to take care of them. But he said, my system is overwhelmed. I don't have the resources. And until we can get them placed in these homes, would you help? And he said, I thought Curt would help because he was one of them. And I said, absolutely. And we did. But when you see these kids, the first time we went, they were like, they're shocked. We had a clown, we had cotton candy and hot dogs, and we brought them all presents, and it was all good. But when we went back the second time, and we came back, totally different. Hugging, happy. It's like, okay, you came back. So I think probably the biggest thing Curt Landry Ministries can do, and anyone can do, and even in your own family, is you'd have to be there. Mm-hmm. You really have to be there. As my best friend I've had since I was 5, he just lost his wife. And, I just was on the phone with him. And the biggest thing that, when the Lord ministered to him, when we were at the service, I just came up behind him and put my hands on his shoulder. I didn't speak a word. I wasn't even really praying. I just put my hands there. And all I was telling him was, you know what? I'm here. I think when you go through loss, people just want to know you care. They don't need counseling per se. They don't need words. They just want to know, either through a gift or your presence, that you're there. And that's why I really want to thank with Curt Landry Ministries and the CLM partners. You've done such a great job. And I just want to ask you, please pray, stand with us, and let us minister, because post-traumatic stress, and pray for Christy and I, we experienced it firsthand. It is, it's very difficult.
Yeah, I think, so much of what you shared, it's like, about the consistency for people to understand. One of the things that I've been honored to witness with the ministry is that we have watched the world change in Israel and the needs since COVID, from COVID to October 7th to the various war fronts. And still, yet, we've been able, because of our donors' generosity, to remain consistent with all the things that we were doing before that, with the help for the Holocaust survivors, with the meals, with the shoes, with, obviously you mentioned the orphans and the safe houses. Like we've had our base projects, and we've been able to remain consistent and to keep showing up, and just to keep showing up in the love of the Lord, and to keep showing up in faithfulness, and to try and do more, and school supplies, and all the different things. And so it's like we have created that consistent backbone, which I think was something that you modeled to me as a parent, was how important it is, even for our kids, that we try our best to remain consistent, and that creates this something they can rely on, that our kids know that on like Fridays we celebrate Shabbat, but that creates, and on Saturdays is our family beach day, or whatever that is. Like that consistent rhythm creates security for them. And when there's security, there's love, and when there's love, there's lack of fear. And so when we do that for all of these different programs, when we are consistently showing up and meeting their needs, that's the other thing that I love about the ministry, is we're not just like, it's not just like shoes for everyone. I mean, shoes is great, but we provided combat boots for the soldiers because that was their need. But we provided sandals and slippers for the Holocaust survivors because that was their need. And we provided refrigerators for the safe house kids because that was their need. Like we went in and we met them where they were at, because that's what Jesus does for us. And the other thing that I think is important that people understand is that, so COVID happened in 2020, and tourism just went in the tank. And so much of Israel's, these young kids that we take care of, they work in tourism industry sectors, in restaurants, in hotels. And so they're without work. Then obviously everything happens on October 7th. And again, tourism back down, and it still has not recovered. And so then there's sirens. And I don't know if people fully grasp, but how many times a day do sirens go off in different locations? Multiple, right? Not every place every day, but they're literally running with their families, and they've got families with kids who literally sleep in the closets of their bomb shelters. Like when we were living in Oklahoma and it's like Tornado Alley, I remember the sirens going off and like the fear that would bring. And even in all of those years, there's only a handful of times that we really felt like, man, we got to get to a safe place. But I remember the fear, and I remember with the kids being like, if I do this, if I move them into the utility room, it's going to create fear. And I was trying so hard not to, seed that in them. So I was really cautious. How many times do we actually make this move? Because this, is it necessary? I cannot imagine being a parent in Israel the last few years and constantly having to relocate my kids from their bed into a safe place. And so a lot of the parents have just opted to literally sleep in these places because then they don't have to move them. So it's like, okay, well, but again, that's just raising that stress that is being created in these young children, in these parents, and then we're seeing it obviously in the generation of the Holocaust survivors. And so when we can show up consistently, thanks to the generosity of our donors, it combats that, and it's familiar, and it's something that they can rely on. And so I love that we've been able to continue to we do gifts at the feast, and we do gifts for their special occasions, just coming through the fall feast, apples and honey for Rosh Hashanah, and, joyful celebrations for Sukkot, whatever that is. And we show that we see them, and we recognize their humanity and their need for some normalcy, that even in the midst of war, there are holidays and there's opportunity for tradition. I think that that's really, really important. So the more that people get behind us, the more that we're able to do, the more lives. And I think what's really important to remember with the Holocaust survivors is that our window is so short.
It's very short.
There are not very many true survivors left. Even in those apartments that we support, a lot of those are children. Some of them are children of survivors. Mm-hmm. But I remember when we took Arabella to Israel, and she was just turned 2, I think. 2. No, she was younger than that. She was like 16, 17 months, Dad. She was little. We were crazy. We took her, and I remember getting pictures of her with the Holocaust survivors and thinking how grateful I was that she'd be able to look back at this someday and say that I was there, and that she got to have that interaction. So...
Do you remember what I taught her to make people laugh?
Yes.
You want me
Bad habits.
Yeah. So I'll share it with you. So I wanted to make her laugh. So what I would do is I would, as the Saba, I could do this. I would put food in my mouth, and she would look at me, and I'd go with food in my mouth. And I did that in America. I didn't think that I was doing it to her to be funny. And so she thought it was, she would laugh because, we'd have dinner, and I'd open my mouth, I had food, and I'd go, and she'd laugh. So now we get her with the Holocaust survivors, and Christy and I are going around the Holocaust, and Arabella's over there with the Holocaust survivors and they're all laughing, and I look over there, and sure enough, there she is at 18 months old, and she's eating dinner and opening her mouth, and they thought it was funny.
Yeah.
So it actually multiplied in the bad behavior of opening your mouth with food in it.
She brought joy.
Yeah, she brought joy.
I think it's important for this conversation just to recognize that the post-traumatic stress has impacted every demographic in Israel.
Everyone.
From our youngest, you even spoke about the Ukrainian orphans. Have we really sat to think about these kids? A lot of them lost parents in the war. They were, like you mentioned, they were rescued by the Jewish agency, brought to Israel, which is supposed to be a safe place. And now look at what life is like there for them. This is serious trauma. So for us to be able to show up with a little bit of joy and a little bit of hope that says that we see you, we see your humanity, we love you, and we love Israel, and we do not because what you said and stated is the news that they watch implies that Americans are not standing with Israel, that Americans think Israel is in the wrong, that Americans are not for the Jewish people. And so when we show up, we are saying, no, the body of Christ loves you. And we are here for you, and we are showing up just like Jesus would do.
Yeah.
And so, but again, it's in the consistency that I think really brings that healing. And it really will be the consistency that will be the answer, because eventually this will all die down and it will be over, but we will still be there.
Right.
We were there before, we were there during,
Yeah.
and we'll be there after.
Yeah. And I want to say this too about, people, we have always worked in the north at Kiryat Shimona, and we've worked in the Golan Heights. We planted olive trees there, and we've always had a close relationship with the Druze.
Yeah.
And this is for years and years. The Druze, actually, I got connected with them because they grow apples in the Golan, and I was a fruit broker. So they love that connection. And so when the Druze in Syria started getting attacked, and the IDF, which was the battalion we support, started moving in to help the Druze, and people didn't understand that. The thing that was so exciting for us is we started a blood plasma program, and to where CLM purchased special refrigerators that would actually keep blood plasma at the right temperature,
Right.
but then also the right syringes to be able to use them for, and I don't want to go into all the details, but anyway, you could basically just punch it in if someone's in the field and
For
not
emergencies.
for emergencies, it actually goes right into the bone, and then you don't have to find a vein, and so all this stuff is very expensive. But I've always had a burden for the Druze too, and it's interesting that our first blood plasma refrigerators and syringes went to actually into Syria with the IDF for their wounded soldiers, but also we were saving the Druze life.
Yeah.
And in Syria. And so when the Druze are being told that the Christians from America in Syria, then what it is it's like, okay, well, they're not just for the Israel, they're for us as well. I mean, that they're all talking about that because it saves lives, because by the time you get the plasma, the blood, it either makes a determination whether they live or what condition they're going to live in, by having that blood transfusion. So, I mean, it's just, all of it brings hope. And, we do a lot of things to save lives. When the war first started after October the 7th, we were purchasing drones, small drones, so that the soldiers could fly the drones down the tunnels to find where the booby traps were and to see where it was. I mean, and these soldiers know that Curt Landry Ministries actually supplied them with these drones, saving their lives.
Yeah.
And I actually met with the soldiers that fly them and just saying, you have no idea what this meant for us. So, yeah, I think I just want to encourage people that I think people have a lot of trauma right now. Look what we're dealing with in America. We're filming this broadcast, and I just got my phone. Someone said, a friend of mine, Charlie Kirk, got shot at an event at a school. I mean, he's a great guy, a real, for real believer, a lover of God. And, we're just at a place right now where standing together, we can't be silent. We have to stand together. We have to unite together, and we cannot allow the post-traumatic. The biggest thing I see with post-traumatic stress is the isolation. Mm-hmm. That's what we see with the Holocaust survivors and our safe house girls. Not so much the guys, but they don't want to go to work. They don't want to go out. They're during that time, when all the rockets were coming in and stuff, it took a while to get them to come out. And that's why we actually, did a pizza party for them, was to try to kind of say, okay, it's time let's bring all the houses together. But I would encourage people, even in the United States, don't isolate, stay connected, fellowship with each other. if you're feeling oppressed, call somebody to pray. Even for us, on the prayer line, explain to them about that option for them to be able to get prayer.
Yeah, so if you're in need of prayer, what we've been talking about today is a heavy, heavy subject. And so if you're in need of prayer, that is something that we want to be able to make available to you. We have an initiative through Curt Landry Ministries called the Freedom Prayer, and it is a step-by-step process. It's a free video series process that can lead you to a place of redemption. It can lead you to a place of transformation. And you may feel like, well, it's just a video. It's not just a video. I'm going to tell you right now, it is an anointed process that is known to go like deep inside of us and help walk you through those step by step. So if you were to sit across from Patty or Tony and have a one-on-one, these are the steps that they would take you through. And the reason that we put it in video format was for multiplication, so that we can reach many lives during the day instead of like just the capacity of a one-to-one ratio. And so if you're in need of prayer, that ministry is available for you. And, I don't know that I've ever asked you to support the work that we're doing in Israel, maybe just a handful of times. But I want to ask you today, as we are coming up or have come through the anniversary of October the 7th, I remember that day so clearly. I remember where I was when the news started coming in. I remember calling my parents. I remember like being so confused about what was going on, because even in my life, terrorist attacks in Israel were never at that mass loss casualty. And I remember saying to Paul, what is happening? Because the numbers were just rising and rising, and we felt so detached, and it was just like we couldn't wrap our head around what was going on. And I know what that did for us just as a family, and seeing what my parents went through going and visiting, but then hearing all of these stories about these survivors who are in their final years feeling rejected and lost and hated again, and feeling the need to isolate. For our safe house girls, for what they've gone through. There was one young lady who had literally graduated from the Bridge to Independence program, moved into her own apartment, and the apartment got struck by a missile. And I'm not laughing, I'm just like, how does this happen? So the apartment gets struck by a missile and destroys her new place. So it's like we get them out, Bridge to Independence. Thankfully, she was not home, but because of your generosity, because of the generosity of Curt Landry Ministries, we were able to help furnishings for another new apartment. It's just like, though, we're going to consistently show up. We're going to help you get free, and we're going to help you stay free. So I want to ask you today to prayerfully consider sowing, and just whatever project it is that connects with your heart. Like, I don't know what age you're at, but all of my grandparents are gone now. But I remember what it was like to see my grandparents, my grandpa, especially on my mom's side. He lived in assisted living for a while, and we would go have dinner with him. And I remember the loneliness of that place for those people who didn't have families. Like, Granddaddy was lucky that we were able to show up, once or twice a week, or even more, that we were able to see him. Some of those people, no family shows. And I hate to tell you, but at the Holocaust survivors' apartment, that is the case for some of them as well. Either their family is gone or they're distanced. And so sometimes you guys are the only visitors that get to show up with their warm meals. And that's you. So if you've had a family member in that situation, maybe that's where you would sow today. Maybe you have young children. Maybe you were a young child that, didn't have family or feel connected. Our Safe House program, our Bridge to Independence, is about raising strong, independent adults, removing them from situations that are harmful, and helping them become the next generation in Israel, giving them that foundation. It is truly a ministry of healing. It is a ministry of transformation, and it is so necessary because they are going to be the ones that carry on the legacy of Israel. They are the next generation. It'll be from that generation that they will have government leaders, and like, we need to undergird them. We need to bring healing. And so when you sow into that program, that is what you are giving. Or maybe you want to sow into kids. Maybe you know what it's like to feel rejected, to feel abandoned, to that orphan spirit that happens. Like, or maybe you have children and you're just like, I don't want my kids to feel this way. Whatever that project is that you can identify with, I want to ask you to give generously today. I get to be a big part of the ministry and our stewardship of these projects. And what I love what Rabbi said is these gifts save lives. For so long, during the war, when it very first started, Sam was sending us projects, and I kept saying, does this save lives? Does this save lives? Like, we didn't want to do anything unless it was a life-saving mechanism, because we wanted to do with the gifts that you gave us the most that we could to have the most impact, the most multiplication. So thank you for sowing generously. You can give curtlandry.com/donate. That's curtlandry.com/donate. And I want you to sow into the project that resonates with you the most, and know that we do the best that we can to steward those funds, to save lives, to improve lives, and to show up consistently. Rabbi, is there anything else you'd like to say today?
No, listen, you will be blessed. Scripture says, I will bless those that bless you, Israel. And Jesus said, as you do it unto the least of these, my brethren, you do it unto me. And my desire, we do so much. I mean, it's a niche ministry. We hit the spots that the government can't fit into, and with their programs, and that's how we've always done it. But I always want to do more, and my heart is, we just had the Jerusalem attack on the bus, and of course that was pretty. It was in a religious neighborhood, and I don't know how the terrorists got in with that machine gun and handguns, but we're in a spiritual warfare. And but for the community, you have to realize on that bus, they're not talking about it, but there were 6 murdered and 5 were rabbis. So you think about it, that if for you in this community, it would be like there was an event and 6 people were murdered and 5 were pastors. These are rabbis. And so it is so traumatic for the community, because even more than pastors, rabbis are held in very high esteem, and they're like abbas, they're sabbas, they're fathers in the community, and so it's very traumatic for them, and that just happened. And so I want to do more, and I want to help more, but I also want to help people. I will say this, is that if you can give, and that's great, but one of the things you can do is subscribe, and you can follow and hit the notification button, and you can do that on our YouTube channel. Why is that important? Because the way that system works, the algorithms, is that if you'll subscribe, follow, and hit the notification, what it does is it allows us to be able to reach more people. It's not just you, but you're helping to support that algorithm so that we actually get more traction with what we're putting out there. We work very hard. The team works very hard on the content. As you can see, it's excellent content, excellently produced. We thank you for that. We have to be a voice. I made a commitment in 91 to be a voice, and I want to thank you for partnering with us, but I also want you to be a voice, and we'll always give you good, clear information.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this important, very sobering conversation. I really hope that you will join us in your prayers and join us in your giving. Join us as we expand the kingdom by meeting the needs of the people right where they're at, those personal needs, those things that they have, maybe that they don't even think anyone knows about, that we're able to find out about, and we're able to show up with in the name of Yeshua and the love of Yeshua. And it's all because of your generosity. So thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Thank you so much for pulling up a seat. I look forward to being with you next week. Same time, same place.